I'd like to call to order the February 15, 2022 Economic Development Airport Committee meeting. In attendance tonight is Dr. Fellner, Mike Richard, and myself. We had a meeting on January 18th of 2022. If you had an opportunity to review the minutes, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes of January 18th.
Second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and tonight we have, it looks like 6 items of discussion. If nobody has any comments, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First item on tonight's discussion is the Crawford Partnership. I know that's been a discussion topic for the last month and a half or so. And so I'm going to floor up to Mike or Dr. Feldman to see if you have any comments, questions.
The only thing I was going to start out with, I guess, would be is I don't know where they're at with the replacement individual, but I understand they're still searching for. Beyond that, we don't necessarily have anything at this point anyway.
I know the discussion has been back and forth about to retain membership or rescind it. I personally am in favor of doing as much as possible to maintain membership in the Crawford Partnership. I think to exit that would be a mistake.
I had a meeting 3 weeks ago, I was invited to the partnership meeting with 2 of their board members and Mark Rataney from the Port Authority, and after sitting with them for about an hour and a half, there are some significant benefits, in my opinion, as well, to maintaining that alliance with the partnership. I had breakfast with Mr. Rataney this morning, and he reiterated that there are some significant benefits. There is, and Mike, you are right, I still see the job opening posted all over social media for that chair. I guess it would be the appropriate title, chair of the Crawford Partnership or the executive director. Does anybody else have anything at this point in time that they'd like to discuss regarding the alliance with the partnership? All right. Second item for tonight is revisiting the Free Center. I have asked Ms. Jones from the Chamber of Commerce to come up this evening and to just have a brief discussion on what's your thoughts, opinions. So if there's no objection, Mr. Richard, Dr. Feldner, just open the floor up to you.
Yeah, so we all know that the Chamber has been, we hosted webinars last February to help educate. So I, as the Chamber Director, have a pretty good understanding of who in the community is like full speed ahead and who in the community still has questions. And then there are some dissenting voices. And so while the facility itself, the actual structure, as planned, would be a great addition to Galion and the Crawford County community as a whole, the business plan, or the lack thereof, is rather complicated. And so while travel sports will likely, generate revenue for the facility, there are dissenting voices in the community that still feel that the entire community needs are not being met by what has been presented. These are valid concerns that still need to be addressed and bottomed out before I think it moves forward. Basically, we need an event center. We are losing events to Bucyrus, to Crestline. When the hub opened in Crestline, their event center is successful. There's something going on there every weekend. While their major niche is weddings, they're also successfully hosting other community events as well. So the fact remains that there are even people in the community who are not in favor of it. They still acknowledge there is a need for Galion to have a place to hold events for the community, whether it's the Chamber and we're holding job fairs or business expos, or I have a health and wellness fair next week at the Y that I can't have more than 30 vendors because that's all their big gym allows. But Can that event center potentially hold travel sports tournaments? Absolutely, and I feel like it could be built into the business plan. But we need to gauge what community needs, and I think the need for a center, a place where we, can have something for us and our community members, to whether they go and they do their silver sneakers classes there from the Y, or we can have Rita come and do tax help for our citizens. The need for a facility like that is there. I just think the model needs to be adjusted and rebranded from only travel sports.
When you're having communications with business leaders that may be dissenting, what are their primary concerns? What needs do they feel that have not been addressed, or what concerns do they have?
They just felt the focus was mainly solely on travel sports. And while, yes, it can help pay the bills, maybe you dedicate one weekend a month to that. Travel sports also, they ebb and flow like most sports. So maybe you have a year, but what happens if you build something like that and you have another year like COVID where everything gets canceled like that? So those are things that, they feel like they were never asked. We have this huge Freeze Foundation fund. What would be great for everyone? I think they felt the focus was, and well justified, because there are well-known and revenue-generating travel sports centers around Ohio. I mean, we visited the one that is it Chillicothe or Coshocton? Yeah. And it's a good business model, and they can follow it, but we're lacking a place. I mean, we hold chamber events at St. Joe's Convocation Center, at Grace Point's Community Life Center, Polk Township Building. Those are all great places, but wouldn't it be nice if we had like a place that had enough room for everybody to come park, and adequate, restroom facilities, and it was actually designed for events?
I think the basic model that was proposed was projecting about 36 weekends of the 52 for recreational sports, whether it be volleyball, basketball, or soccer, which has multiple seasons. Do you think it would be adequate to assume that the other 17 weekends of the year would be adequate enough to fulfill the wishes of these other events? And we're looking at a sports recreation center trying to incorporate other events to help offset the costs,
Right.
instead of an event center that's going to incorporate recreation. I mean, that's why it's going to have projected volleyball courts, soccer fields, and
Right.
things like that. I think that's doable or reasonable.
Personally, I would leave a little more wiggle room than that. A little more than just, that's more than a 50% dedicated to just travel sports. And I just think you need something more than that in order to get the entire community to buy into it. Because what percentage of parents or grandparents have a child that plays a travel sport, that understand, when you're going to a tournament, if you're all in, you're buying a hotel for 2 nights, you're finding local places to go eat and drink and shop, and you might have a tournament that starts at 8 a.m. on Saturday, and your next one's not till 5 p.m. Saturday night, and then you don't know if you're playing Sunday or not, So those are things that not a large percentage of our community, have had personal experience with. And we have other facilities that you can, have a soccer game or a baseball game or softball. We've got Pico. We've got large multiple basketball facilities that maybe you hold like the smaller games off that site and then the big final game there. I think there's a way to do it. I think a lot of the people are just concerned because the only focus was on the travel sports. And I think they feel it shouldn't be more than 50% of the time.
I think that the emphasis on travel sports was the momentum builder. I don't know that, but I agree with you with we went to Academic Challenge at in Mansfield at their education center, which can be configured a lot of different ways. Now, obviously but meetings were well, I've had meetings there too. That's a great event center, and so attracting those type of things, like you said, are need to be incorporated into, or at least verbalized.
Right.
I think I've also been mildly involved in travel as a grandparent. Oh yeah, I'll go to this game, and it's amazing to see the turnout and what parents will spend locally. So you need a facility that's going to do that too. I don't know where, so those ideas are outstanding. I don't know, where are we redesigning it, or,
Well, I think
and I
that
think that's partly where, getting back to getting the partnership involved, I think may be helpful. I don't know where this project stands now. Gary was the spearhead, and we seem to have lost the point maybe.
Well, Gary's more, the Freedom Center more for the Port Authority than the partnership, give or take.
Yeah.
Sounds to me, and you've mentioned to me on the phone, possibly rebranding of the marketing for the center itself.
right.
Which I definitely don't think is out of line. I mean, we can be full 52 weeks out of the year out there versus 36. I do want to mention that through my discussion this morning with Mark from the Port Authority, there is, I guess, discussions going on through the Historical Society for the middle school vacant lot there to possibly put a small event center, possibly a small B&B. I don't know. That's Mr. Palmer's over there because you're part of that board, but that was mentioned.
No, I'm not. We're part of that board.
I'm sorry.
I've just not heard before, which is expressed a surprise.
Okay. That was mentioned to me this morning, so. But anyway, I completely understand. Anything else on that topic?
May I?
Please.
May I? Just a little bit of, I'll say disagreement, but amplification. When the first study, when the first group came together, it was to address a need felt throughout the county, and they proved it out, of existing lack of recreational space. That was the predicate. There isn't enough, and and people have been through that. You have a youth athletic team, say basketball, they're just finishing up, or volleyball. You are, you get late nights on an inadequate schedule. Meaning that if you're going to do any kind of sport, but particularly a competitive sport, you have to practice a couple of times a week, more than a half hour. And the Y is a great facility. They serve thousands of people, but everywhere you look, you think of any program area that you've been involved in, they're limited because of that lack of space. So the first study was based on the unmet need. The first consultant study was based on the unmet need for existing youth sports, high school sports. When you're in that sort of envisioning, you're in that early stage of trying to put together a concept, I think there's needs to be a lot of room for latitude. And so in that spirit, or in that thought process, the city, which had been part of the group that was doing the early planning, or myself, I'll just speak for myself, I let the vision of the travel sports blend in with the original purpose and the original need. So this goes back to what Miranda was saying, people in the community may think, I would agree with her on this, that it's not for everybody in the community. And I don't know if that's a marketing or branding, I think it's a programming issue. You gotta make sure that the programming and the hours of programming are for the 6th grade basketball team, those kinds of things. So, with that other vision of travel sports came a upscaling of the size of the facility. So one of the things I know, I participated in most of a conversation that was held at the last port meeting about which direction they should go. And I think my sense of that meeting is that they're beginning, I'll say factioning in a negative way, but some people are still committed to the metal building, the all steel structure, the 3 basketball courts, 6 volleyball, and a minimal size soccer field. It's youth indoor soccer. It's not as big as some other footprints where they do soccer and other turf sports. Anyway, and then there was some discussion, Doc made quick reference to it when he said, maybe you look at a different footprint, maybe you change the structure of the building to be able to either accommodate public desire, I think candidly, to be able to afford it. So there was that discussion, and my takeaway from it is that they're sifting through those options, and there's not a strong consensus. I'd say one more thing, my favorite expression. I don't think there is a financing plan going forward. There's been some minimizing in the chatterbox of the world and serious discussion about how to take the $5 million commitment to council. Okay. I've heard it described as lukewarm or not worth the paper it's written on, a bunch of silly stuff. But it's the biggest chunk of money that's been committed to the project. So I think I want to just repeat that because council stuck their neck out a little bit, those people who voted for it. It's not meant as criticism to people who didn't, but you stuck your neck out, and since then, I mean, it's been the cliche crickets, not anything. So I didn't go to the court meeting to light a fire, but to participate in the discussion about where we're going, not dissimilar from this. So having said all that, I think we should look at the scope of the building. I think we should look at ourselves, all of us collectively, each group, and decide how much we can actually raise. I'm real skeptical about raising 10, but maybe you might be able to accomplish 8. Now, having said that, I can remember sitting in this room and be going on record over the years, well, anything more than $5 million will be too darn much. Well, costs have increased significantly. But the estimate last fall, when you all voted for the resolution of support, that was a $10 million estimate. The billion was $10 million. I think that had most of the inflation stuff. So I'd like them to take a look at a different configuration, some reductions in cost. There's no secret, I think, the more people that think about this, some hiding things. There's no secret. I think there's a real great daycare opportunity there. So, I have trouble caring. I don't make a comment like the mayor of Hudson, so I'll watch myself. I really don't care about kids from Hudson coming down here very much at all. But I do think we have to care about the queuing that we have in daycare, and the notion that during certain times of the day, if you built this thing with that in mind, that might be another programming area, additional daycare, perhaps a second shift daycare. So I've had one hurried conversation with someone whose name will come up in a few minutes when we get back to the Port Authority appointment about the idea. And so I think that's something, since we're talking about it, that, I don't know, I think it changes the revenue stream. It connects for sure with the employing community. I don't know much about daycare. I once called it babysitting. I got in big trouble. Daycare providers looked at me like they're going to throw me out of the building. But anyway, I can see as much commuting along Route 30, as many people who leave the community that would need a daycare. Second shift's been a problem since I can remember. It's shifting from babysitting to daycare, where you find a lot of Gallion area people work in that retail market in Ontario and shifted where they get their schedule on Saturday to know when they work the next week. So they're not, that daycare stuff's brutal for that type of individual. So anyways, that's my new idea. I know I can see I'm boring some people, but I think it's a way to infuse a little bit different approach to programming, touch more people in the community, and perhaps generate a little operating income. Pay the utility bills, those kinds of things. I don't want to be mocked as it comes out of my mouth that, oh, the daycare center is going to pay the bills for the free center. Oh, I'm not saying that at all. But it gives it serves another constituency in a way that's like, what do you do with daycare? You have a meeting room, you play with them, there's a cafeteria, not cafeteria, but a kitchen, and there's more space for those kids to run in.
Yes.
Anyways,
Please.
I agree with the mayor on that. If you ask our business community, the top three reasons why they are struggling right now with employees, one is workforce, whether it's unskilled or people just not wanting to work. Number two is childcare. There's just not enough. And number three is transportation. So.
Interesting.
that's all I got. Sorry.
No, I just wanted, Gary, if you're listening, I want to walk back my statement that we lost our point man. I meant with the partnership, not the Port Authority.
Yeah.
I heard him go, what?
Yeah, me too.
What has changed? It's definitely changed things, and so
Why
anyway.
doesn't somebody build a daycare center in Gallion if they need it for some? I mean, that's a great business idea.
It doesn't. I don't think it cash flows, Aaron. I think that you add it on down on Gill Avenue. It's like, man, so that's why I don't know.
Okay.
I've been working on it for a few weeks, but I'm starting to share it. If you hang with me much, that's how some ideas. That's where they come from. And so, anyways, we'll see.
All right. Anybody else have any other comments on this center? We also, not to mention, still have to deal with infrastructure, and that's something that's still hovering out there as well. So it can be a very timely project if it gets up and going. So, you have anything else, Mr. Jones? All right, thank you. All right, moving on to the item D, the former Eagle Crusher lot transfer.
But I didn't see.
We can talk about the Central Hotel as well. I think I crossed it out before I got there. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Next item up for discussion is ordinance 2022-11, the Central Hotel. And Mayor, if you have a few.
You know, it's really since Brian Trish can't be here tonight. If some people remember how this situation was presented to the city, it goes back a handful of years, 5, help me, is that what it was? 6 years. And I don't want to replay all of that, but the city was put in I think a difficult position, and at that time council agreed to go ahead and infuse about $890,000. It was $890,000 of a revolving loan fund into the rebuilding of that residential facility. I think we put in roughly $1 million, and I believe that the owner, the funder at that time, put in $5 million plus. Okay. We knew it was just important to get that project funded. There was then, as there is now, 25, 30 people, probably should know, who live there. That's their home. And so the idea of saying, well, we've got some structural problems here, we're just gonna let the place deteriorate further wasn't acceptable. So now comes a time when there's, and this one I'll hand off to the lawyers, becomes legal, working out the legal arrangement that protects the city the most and allows for the transfer from the previous owners to the city. So that's about all I'm going to say. It has to do with puts and takes that we knew about when we entered into the contract, that this day would come. I don't see it as a day of reckoning, but it's a day of when we move the ownership from the previous set of owners to one in which we're the lead owner, the principal partner, the owner. So, all right,
Please. Because I don't believe Central Hotel has come up in the last 2 years. It may have been before my time.
Here it is.
Can you just give me the brief, short Cliff Notes version dummy
Yes.
version of what's going on?
Here's the real simple one. Central Hotel was renovated in the early 2000s to turn into senior housing. That was done with a mixture of different kinds of funding. And it was a very complex deal where this entity went in and this one, and over the years they've moved around. Those entities have changed. The fact of the matter is that 6 years ago we found out that the work that had been done on the Central Hotel to get it renovated back in 2003 or 4 was extremely faulty. There were structural issues. It was in danger of collapse. This is what the mayor is referring to when we had the opportunity to consider putting some of our revolving loan fund money, which is money that we get from, it's not locally produced money, it's money we get from Columbus, actually from the federal government, and put that money into the hotel. At that time, the conversation was about security. How are we going to, get our money back? How are we going to make sure we can? While it's technically not the city's money, it's revolving loan fund money. It's still money that we can administer and have a real impact in businesses. So the agreement was made, and the council made the agreement to do what's referred to as a put option, which basically means that at some point in the future, after a certain period of time had gone by and a certain set of circumstances had taken place, that the owner of the hotel, the managing owner, could put their interest, not shove, but put their interest in a non-voluntary way to us. They could transfer the interest to us. So, as the mayor said, we've known about this for some time. It was always there as a date in the future. Well, that date is here. So over the last 6 months to a year, my office, in conjunction with Tom, umpteen million conversations and phone calls and other things, have been in dialogue to determine what's the best way to make this transfer happen in a way that protects the city, that also gives the city maximum opportunity to do things like get some money out of it so that we could possibly use RLF money for something else as well. So what you've got before you is a document in what this ordinance does is to authorize this. A purchase and sale agreement. It's just like you're buying property. Now, what I want to encourage you to consider, though, is that really, while it says purchase and sale and it functions like a real estate sales agreement, you really don't have the choice on whether or not the city is going to get the Central Hotel. Because the option, if you don't go this route, is for them to do the put, is to just give us their interest. And that presents something which is not as flexible from a legal point of view It's not as advantageous for the city. It would be basically that we would have ownership of a nonprofit corporation that owns the hotel. So there would be a layer in between us and the property. And so we had contacted outside legal counsel, and they had recommended to us that the best way to move forward is actually to take the property and not to take the ownership of the company that has the property. I know it sounds like a distinction without a difference, but it's a big difference. So what this does is we would be acquiring the Central Hotel. In addition to that, we would be assuming, I'm going to be upfront with you here, we would be assuming a loan. It's a $550,000 called HDAP loan. That loan, which we would be assuming is, which I might add, we would be assuming with the put as well, is totally forgivable at the end of the period of the loan. It's sort of their security to make sure that we manage the hotel in a proper way. It's a low and moderate income situation. There are certain safeguards on the hotel. It can't be just rented to anybody. So we have the opportunity to take ownership of the hotel in a way that's most advantageous for the city. Interestingly enough, if we were dealing only with the put, the other option, the thing that they could require us to do, we probably wouldn't be coming to council because you authorized it 6 years ago. You authorized us taking the put. And I'm talking about the council as a whole. You authorized that to take place. And that is something we wouldn't have to come back to council for. But because of the Ohio Revised Code, if it's an exchange, if it's a sale, we have to get your permission. Or council has to authorize it. So again, what you would be acquiring is the hotel itself and this loan, which would be forgivable. The hotel has a management company which operates it and has for several years. We've been in dialogue with the management company. They're willing to continue on. I don't know that your office, Tom, has made a decision in that regard, but yeah.
First things first.
Yeah.
What do you mean when you say forgivable?
At the end of the period, which I think, Aaron, is 2037, is when it's due. There's no payments in the interim. When it's due, it suddenly goes away and it doesn't exist.
And what is the advantage for the city under this new agreement compared to the put that was just decided upon 6 years ago? What is advantageous about this course of direction? And what are the risks, if any? Because I'm asking out of complete ignorance here.
No, that's fine. You just got to do it the reverse way, Aaron.
Yeah.
Risks, like any property owner. You have a furnace go out, you have a certain risk. If the back wall collapses, there's a certain different kind of risk. I mean, the city has been in a position with the Moser building, with HGI, of being in a sort of property management kind of setting. Nothing I think the city goes after and tries to acquire, but at the same time, that's the risk. That's the risk right there. And again, from the point of view of the advantages of it, first of all, it's what's been recommended to us by our outside counsel, which is an important consideration. But the main advantage to us is that we are in a better position to do things like, we were talking about this afternoon, possibly go out and trying to recoup some of our revolving loan fund money out of it. If we took the put, all the revolving loan fund money would go away. We wouldn't be able to benefit from that. And the other thing is, and I didn't mention this, but there is sort of an auditing point of view here as well. Actually owning a corporation that owns a building provides another level of auditing and accounting that is not necessarily something which, we've talked to Brian about this, we've talked to Brian and Trish and before him, and they just think that this is a cleaner way to do it. I really think the other thing is that the negotiations which are going on with the current owner they have agreed to assume and forgive other loans that they wouldn't if the code was involved.
Loans to who?
Loans to them. The entity that is the controlling entity with the hotel right now is owed money from the non-profit corporation that owns the hotel.
But Mike, when the $5 million, $6 million fix took place, that other entity, they didn't have money. They incurred debt to be able to fix it up. I think, I'm trying to be nice. Their primary interest, corporate, Ohio Capital Corp for Housing, is that what it's called? Something close.
If you're talking about the current owner, it's Leeds, but
Right, but the people who funded it, that had the tax credits,
yes.
all this thing is triggered by them wanting to get out from their ownership position. And preserve their perfect record of no tax credit projects cratering on it. But for that, this is just my opinion, and you can probably go back and said it at the time, is without our $1 million and without that perfect record, if they were funding these tax credit projects, like, hey, we had one down in Ironton that fell in the river, it was terrible, you know, these guys had never had a deal go bad. So that was a big motivator. Wanting to absolve themselves, get out from under, and I don't know, it's not a very artful term, but I think that's, they wanted to limit their risk.
Currently.
Yeah, they wanted to say, we got a way out, we're gonna put $5 million in here, I'm speaking kind of for them, we don't expect to get it out, but we won't default on the tax credits, which were a significant part of the very first fix-up. I wanna just throw in quickly as an aside, this was 100% 15-year abatement deal, this first CRA deal. So as other senior projects come up and the temptation is to protect the taxpayers by not, that's, you may see one coming pretty soon. Again, that foreshadows the other appointments y'all need to make to the Housing Council. So it wasn't, my point is, it wasn't unprecedented. In fact, the Guilds deal was not the first 100% CRA deal, it was the second one. But in any event, I think we would have, without having done this, we would have spent the $1 million to demo the building. Because the $5 million was as far as Ohio Capital Corp was going to go. They weren't, they had a couple whoopses building, so I think they probably incurred more overall in the construction than that first deal that we agreed to. So anyway, it's so had we taken over ownership of this limited liability corporation, he'd had that $5 million. So that's what Tom spent. Thomas spent a bunch of time with another Tom, with Squire Patton Boggs, to try to make sure that these interests were protected. So, not sure. I guess I'm trying to fill in some blanks in the story as but you may be thinking, like, well, why don't we just walk away from it? I think it's not an option. Anyway, sorry.
So this building is coming back to us regardless.
Yes,
Okay.
unless we default on the contract.
Okay.
Major contract.
Right. So that's not really an option. So it's coming back to us
Yes, sir.
regardless. What is the city's responsibility to maintaining the building? Is it going to be getting a management?
I think what we intend to do is, for the foreseeable future, maintain the relationship with Fairfield Housing. That's what it's called.
Yep, it is.
They're the actual operator that leads another entity that wants out. Ohio Capital Corporate Housing wants out, leads wants out. They're just, it's not their niche, and they just want to exit. So Fairfield wants to be here, we think, in the short term. And that's our plan, to hire them to manage it on a day-to-day basis.
What they're doing now,
Yes.
maintenance, and they're funded by the rentals that they get?
Yes.
Would we be responsible for any other monies now that we're the owner?
I think yes.
Okay.
I think yes, and where we're gonna come up with that, my proposal, my plan would be to take the now recharging revolving loan fund up in the neighborhood of 75 to 80,000 and be ready to commit that to a furnace, any kind of major problem that would happen. So we would take it over and we would seed a maintenance fund, if you will, that unless you had this is all risk. I don't know. I mean, unless you had a major problem, you could probably do a lot of that. We know we've got the long term, 37, you said?
37
Did you
more.
say 2037?
So it's 2037, I think that's what rings in my head.
I have trouble carrying that far in the future, Doc. But anyway, at some point we need to address the needs.
How many units are
Because
there?
it's all electric. I don't know.
30 or 33,
How much income does it generate each month?
we have all that information. So if you want a copy of the financials, you can get it.
It's
In fact, I have with me tonight, I just have one copy, we can have it.
You mentioned the revolving loan fund.
Yeah.
And it being recharged currently? Okay.
Yeah, we've got a few
What-
people still paying
What's the balance about?
about 80,000.
Okay. So you also said something I thought I heard about recouping the 890?
Well, Thomas said something about that.
Well, that's based on our conversation we had the other day, but I mean, the opportunity would be there, I don't know.
I mean, how?
Sell
Honestly.
it. Sell it.
Okay. All
That
right.
was gonna be my next question. What's our long-term plan? Is
Yeah,
that's-
sell it?
That's another thing that's facilitated by owning it.
Is that you can sell it?
Yeah.
Okay. As
Um,
opposed to the original put, which,
Well, for something, we would get nothing out of it without, if we didn't put right, we'd get nothing. I wanted to mention too, to answer your question about risk, there was city hired a structural person to walk through last August, to do a look to see, of course, that was just without invasive, tearing apart walls or everything, but it was in relatively good shape, and I have that report as well.
Yeah, we had a structural engineer,
Yeah.
so it wasn't, the right kind of person to do the
I
assessment.
kind of wanted to know that without knowing exactly how to ask it, but I keep thinking about that Tom Hanks building pit. And, that would be best case scenario, worst case scenario type of situation.
It's always risk, Aaron, it's always risk.
Now, I think I think what I've learned, or all those years, is you inherit decisions all the time.
sure.
I don't want to get into other subjects. And this was the decision to save it with the original tax credit deal that was put together and the reconstruction that took place. Best thing I can say about that, it's been a bumpy ride, but if you remember how the shape it had degenerated into before that, I think it's kind of an unqualified success. And I like the family that owned it, not bashing on them, but that it was just turned out to be too big for them to renovate. So the first owner after Richie's basically, when they sold it, just didn't go well, and it was it was in bad shape. So
Well, and then it's been a you know, not being a Galley native,
Yeah.
I don't have, you know, I don't pine for the old days.
Yeah.
You know, but sentimentally, that was, you know, the star
Yeah.
to build, you know. So, you know, to say that was one of the reasons for the decision to, well, we've come this far, and, you know, just the revolving loan fund, I just want an aside for your benefit, again, is money that was not general fund money or city money, but it was money that the city administered loans to businesses. I was a recipient of one and made my payments back. You know, so it really is a good, you know, it was a good use of the funds. We thought, I was on council at that time, and, you know, and it was a unanimous decision to, and I didn't feel at that time that, you know, we were under duress. You know, it seemed like a viable option, again, to save a sentimental jewel of the city, you know, on the square especially. So, you know,
I can just say that, you know, he kind of had that old town nostalgia on 51, and until the apartments were created, that building was empty my entire life. I don't ever remember anything being in that building from Level Lakes. I don't ever remember. And my memory started in the mid-70s. Does anybody else have any comments? I have no issues asking for a motion to send this on to full council.
I would make that motion to move ordinance 2022-11 off the full council.
Second?
I'll second that
All
motion.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now on to item D, the formal eagle crushing lot transfer.
Well,
I don't know what that's about.
Well, I was surprised when, Aaron, when you mentioned that you had a meeting and had lunch with Mark,
Breakfast.
breakfast.
Yes.
That's cool, you can do that. I'm
Yeah.
really, quite honestly, I'm disappointed that he's not here. He was notified a couple days ago about the meeting.
That's why we met this morning, because he had other obligations, otherwise he would have been here.
All right, whatever. So then you know, in talking with him, so like, fire away.
Just,
No, I'll be making
this
pretty
was added to
simple.
the agenda. I
Yeah, it's
didn't
our
ask for
stuff.
this.
It's our stuff.
Basically, from my understanding, that there are tentative plans in place, very tentative, for that site down South Market Street. I know in the past,
Jeremy?
just in the past, the discussion has been everything from, you know, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but on that site was mentioned possibly small single-family homes. Mark mentioned something about some type of small industrial complex. I kind of, in my mind, when he was telling me, pictured it as the Mosier building, where we broke it up into sections or built into sections, where one small business, manufacturing, whatever the case may be. That's really all that he
Yeah,
discussed with me about.
so the local business people approached us about the site. They've got a plan for two kinds of development. I think it makes sense to transfer it to the Port Authority.
Thank you.
What I worry about, and why we could sell it, but it's that 5 week, and there isn't this great urgency where these buildings that they're proposing to put up are kind of on their way to be delivered. It is early in the process. But I think the idea of being able to hand that off to the Port Authority, they're in a position to negotiate the price. So I think will happen if we bid it out. We could possibly have, like happens in other situations, where property owners buy it and have no plan to develop it. And it's not a person, a company. It's something that we have to try to use the Port Authority. So, anyways. That's really what it is to transfer, have the idea to go ahead and have the transfer to the port, a little bit like the Wrenchville, well, not a little, just like the Wrenchville property. We bought it. No, I back up. We gave the money to the port. It's not. So we have that property. It's got phase 1, phase 2, so it's most of the way towards being able to build on. Turns out not to be suitable for residential without a lot of remediation. So it's like, okay, well,
Do you
now we
think-
know. Huh?
Do you think that maybe next month, if we can get him in advance, he can come up and put a little more clarification, maybe?
I don't think there's any more clarification. It's
As
just
far as getting it into an ordinance form to move it on.
He was talking to me about that this morning.
Yeah, I just don't quite understand. Oh, well, if you,
It would just have to be voted onto the agenda if you wanted to have it on the next council meeting, or after that. You wouldn't have to have it, wouldn't have to come to this committee again.
Okay.
It just has to be voted onto the council agenda then.
No problem.
all right, I don't want to get the, I don't want to get the thing derailed. I'm surprised that they're not there to give their, they must be okay with it because nobody came to
Okay.
reason through it that way. I'd like to, I think the only other thing we've communicated to them is we've got 17 grand in the phase 1, phase 2. So somehow over the life of the real estate agreement, we need to get that back out. I think we're looking at I think initially an option so they can develop the plan and then a sale. But all of that, I think would be important that the port keeps the city aware of, and whatever guidance we give, they try to stay in guidance in terms of how we'd like to get our money back. So anyway,
Mr. Richard, if you are in agreement, could you come up with the verbiage to make the motion to have this moved to Dr. Feldner?
Well, I think we just have to ask Mr. Palmer to
Yeah,
family
it's-
legislation
it's-
in time, for the Tuesday meeting and then
Okay.
vote it on
Yeah.
the agenda. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, put it on the agenda next Tuesday. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
You
All
have to
right.
do it anyway, since
But
you're
I
on the city.
agree with the mayor. I think this lot needs to go to the Port Authority. I think
Sure.
they'll have greater latitude to be able to have it developed.
And
So,
I apologize to all of you if this was not just mentioned in passing this morning, so I apologize.
no man, I was just upset. Like I asked the guy to be here, I'm not upset with you. He can eat with whoever he wants, but when there's legislation like the next thing that's coming up, it's like, wow, all right, whatever.
All right.
Whatever.
Well, I guess we're gonna. be
Guess
fine.
we're
We'll
not-
take
I
care of
guess
business.
not.
We'll take care of business.
I guess we will.
Thank you, Director Palmer. So we'll look forward to seeing that on next Tuesday night. Any other comments or discussion on that topic? All right, moving on to the Port Authority appointment
Hey,
resolution.
Aaron, before
Yes.
we go on, the proposal would to have any of that building on the south end, I'm thinking about the neighbors that are there. That have raised heck about the condition of the property before we do it. That this is the building, I wish we had a mock-up tonight. It's that there's a rendering that could have been provided that we handed off, the developer handed off. So that's another reason I'm kind of, the building will set back off, although the site plan's real tentative. It won't be right on Market Street. It'll set back, the parking will be in front. I think it would be a condo type project where there's 2 or 3 businesses. All of it would be in existing zoning, so I don't think there's.
Would you be kind enough to ask Matt or Natasha to email us a copy?
Yeah, I'll get that back.
That'd be great.
I'll get
Thank
that
you.
from you. Yeah, we have every reason we have confidence in the company that's proposing to make the acquisition, in that the city has done business with them, and they've consistently done what they said they do. So. All right, thanks.
Thank you. All right, moving on to resolution 2022-3, which is the nomination of Amy Wilkenthauer to the Port Authority. I've known Amy since we were kids. She's the new CEO of the YMCA, lifelong Guyanite with her family. My personal opinion is it's a wonderful choice. Does anyone else have a anything
I
to discuss.
agree.
Yeah.
I think she'll be a good addition to the Port Authority.
Well, I also think that her addition to the Port Authority puts to rest any rumors that there might have been about any angst between the Y and Free Senator. I think she'll have valuable input to the design and, complementary.
Well, that's definitely one of them, the end of the spectrum to consider. We never know until we know, I guess, but I haven't had a chance to discuss it, but just knowing her, her character and her dedication to the city, I think it's, I have absolutely no issues at all, so.
Me either.
Would you like to make that?
I'd like to.
Just real quick, if I could, I think that, that part of that, where we got into the travel sports and less on meeting that needs assessment. I've been saying for the last 6 months at least, that I think we need to look at this as a Y annex. And the concern that Y board members may have expressed, I've tried to address that by saying, everything that you would like to do better, you need more space. And this would really help them expand their programming. And I think it would give not an unfair leg up, but it would allow us to look at the operations differently than what had been proposed in the past. In the proposal that's kind of on the table, I think there's a $2 million operating deficit for like the first 3 years until it breaks even on paper. It has to break even. A lot of that, in my view, had to do with some of the overhead that was proposed, and I think you could build an overhead within the Y structure that I think would make more sense to a larger number of galleons. Thanks for letting me add that. They've got 3,300 members or some crazy number like that. You gotta be kidding.
Another variable for consideration.
3,000 freaking members.
All right.
If we just had their support, it would say a lot about the wisdom of the project.
Motion to.
Yeah. Well, and on that, I'd like to make a motion to forward resolution 2022-3 on the full council.
I'll second that.
In favor?
Aye.
All right.
Just I can do quick, Aaron, if you imagine that. We'll get out of here by 8.
I never imagined that looking at this agenda.
No, I did too, so like we went through the partnership quicker. I thought they might have somebody here to present, to ask questions, or answer questions, so that went well. Okay, CRA Housing Advisory Council.
Yeah.
I'm not. We formed that in order to be able to do CRA commercial projects, okay? Some of the board members originally, the Port Authority board members, I don't know if they got promoted from rookie ball to something, but they went from the advisory board onto the Port Authority. We didn't have any CRA commercial projects that required them to meet. So there is one out there, I made reference to it. I think every time you have housing tax credits, almost certainly every time you have senior housing tax credits, there's a request for tax abatement. I know it's coming. I wrote a letter I can share with you that says the city is committed to looking at CRA. We'll get off the subject of the appointments. I told the guy, I'm not sure how the 100% 15-year stuff will go. Okay, I think they're going to ask for that. So that goes through this group, the Housing Advisory Council. You've got 2 members. One, I can't remember how it went vacant. Shirley,
One's
maybe?
Shirley and the other one's Gail, and Shirley is not able, and Gail is not interested.
So we asked them. Sharon was another member, Sharon Baldinger. they both said they didn't want to be reappointed. And so I've got one appointment on the mayor's side of the, and you all have two. So I'm not sure.
Who does the current board besides myself, Mandy, and Gail was the only other one I thought of, but that answered that question. So how many vacancies?
Oh, you got, Aaron has Sharon's seat, you've got one then, I think, or.
Myself and Mandy are the only two that I know of that's on that board that I can remember. We only met once, remember, for 5 minutes, and the folks from the prospective assisted living never showed up, so we were in and out within 5 minutes. So I've only met, but I remember Mandy's on it with me.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, well, I don't
All right.
know who appointed Aaron, because I don't have a, I don't.
Well, all I'm doing is saying, I think you need to formally appoint 2 members,
Yes,
and I believe I have 1 member to appoint because of Sharon's vacancy.
Did you have anybody in mind on that? Oh,
no, we don't have to approve his appointment, we just have to do our own.
So anyways, it is,
I mean, you guys can get back to me, I mean, we don't have anything, I don't have anything drawn up now, I mean, think about ideas, and we can do it at the next meeting, so.
So we're just meeting to let us know that we need to.
we're just saying you
Yeah.
appoint someone so that we can have a meeting and address this guy's formal application.
Okay, sounds
The
good.
letter is, didn't get anybody, doesn't commit to anything, but it says the city will work with you. It's the kind of letter they needed to be able to apply for the tax credit.
So
Yes,
our pool of candidates is,
anybody.
okay,
They
It
can,
doesn't have to be, I mean, it was council members, because it was Shirley and Gail when they were both council.
but that's not
It does not have to.
constrained.
If you could, you know,
Okay.
um,
elector.
yeah.
Breathing.
What about that?
Did you say
Have another
breathing?
question?
Breathing for debate.
So-
So.
anyways, it's that, we gotta act so that we can meet and they can have a negotiation.
So by next month's meeting, next month's meeting,
Yeah,
ready
I think
to
so.
go?
Is that too late?
Next month, or we need to do it sooner?
Okay.
I mean,
Sooner the better.
he didn't need to have a ordinance with a certain percentage. I just think, the 100%, that, there was that, when you go above 75%, you bring in the school district, and I'm probably the last guy in the room that, like, try to read the minds of the school district, but I would be surprised if they were, didn't have some questions about, full abatement.
And this is property tax.
Yeah. Yep. Then we'll go back. It doesn't, this is the argument we'll make on behalf of the project. It doesn't increase, it doesn't cost the school district any money. Okay? The abatement, the new tax valuation, okay? All that does is reduce other commercial and industrial property owners' taxes. It doesn't increase, doesn't cheat the school district. It's that reduction factor, how that works. So, now on new voted millage for the school, that it would, they would get that new valuation, but the other stuff, the existing voted stuff. Oh, well, I'm not gonna try to get into that too deep, but that's the argument. We lose tax revenue, and it really isn't the case. That's a shot across the bow. I'll hear from Mrs. Parkinson.
Anything else for tonight? Mayor, anything else for tonight?
No, that's no. I think we're making some progress.
I don't know when our next scheduled meeting is,
It's
Julie.
right on your agenda.
Next meeting time, March 15th, 2022, and I will be in South Miami Beach on spring break with my family.
Good for you.
So, sure, two of you, we got some probably things to discuss. We do
March.
Sound fair? If If there's nothing else, I'd like to motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:04.
Leeds Rivers Resources Name that Mansfield and Wyatt pursuing a $10 million sports complex.
That bill